Duelist Kingdom had a profound impact on many of us growing up in the 2000s and onward, and for others it sparked a long-lasting legacy in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game, myself included. It's this long-standing legacy of what you might call a children's TV show that brings me here today, to look back at the inspiring qualities that the first arc of the anime contained, and hopefully we can uncover what made these early beginnings shine so brightly. Because I have to inform you today that this show, while perhaps being made for kids, is not lacking in seriously respectable storytelling qualities. This is simply a good season of a good show, and I'm excited to discuss it. Quickly though, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy this video and want to see further story analysis from your boy Woski. Yami, Kaiba, Pegasus, these are the names of the duelists this arc revolves around, and they are a key to getting at the heart of this season, so that's where we'll focus. Now, right away this season pulled off something fairly uncommon, delivering a first episode with staying power, one that hits us hard every time we watch it, remaining in our memory as one of the quintessential episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! The main reason of course being Exodia, and leading up to the reveal of Exodia, it's made clear the types of characters our protagonist and secondary antagonist are. Yami is about faith, believing yourself, acting with honor, relying on friends, while Kaiba is power, greed, ego, and arrogance. He and he alone wields the most powerful monsters. If someone else possessed a Blue Eyes, he'd either flaunt his immense wealth and buy them out of it, or strong-arm them into wagering it on a duel, as he does with Yugi's grandfather. Kaiba is the undefeatable duelist, the man at the top of the world, and his entire societal standing is held up by this larger-than-life image he has perfected for himself. He doesn't need friends, he doesn't need to use his heart. Whatever gets in his way he will demolish with unyielding force, as he attempts to do with Yami. However, Yami is everything Kaiba lacks, making him the correct foil to Kaiba, as his power comes from the places Kaiba has ignored, a power that while the Pharaoh is best at utilizing, is available to anyone who will put their heart into the game, as we see time and time again throughout the season. It's a power Yami does not hoard for himself, but pleads that others embrace it as well, knowing that it will uplift them. Yami trusts in his cards, whose spirits he shares a profound and storied bond with, as we find out later, and in the people he cares about, and it's when he's at his lowest that his faith becomes its strongest, which is true of a lot of people, and his low point in the first episode is facing down Kaiba's 3 Blue Eyes White Dragon, the face of Kaiba's supremacy, and on the brink of defeat it comes down to one draw, one card to turn it all around, to spring forth an unforeseen, truly unstoppable and terrifying power. To do so, fate itself will need to be disrupted, and an outcome that even with Kaiba's tireless computer analysis was seen as impossible, and from this mysterious power that engulfs even the 3 Blue Eyes, Kaiba, the all-powerful duelist, is pushed to utter terror, a reaction contrasted by the sheer force of nature that is Dan Green's performance of Yami Yugi. Kaiba's ego is shattered in an instant. As this takes place, Yami strips away the darkness from Kaiba's heart, and from all angles at once this character, who had everything, has been torn apart, something that would leave him consumed by shame and confusion, as the world collapsed around him, his reputation in the gutter, and on the other hand the legend of Yami Yugi, the future king of games, has begun. For seemingly this ordinary high schooler, the world would now open up to him, for better or worse. This experience took a lot out of Kaiba, so he runs off on a soul-searching mission, attempting to reconnect with himself, to rediscover his identity now that this darkness has been stripped away, which was such a large part of him, something that is made more apparent in a duel we'll talk about soon. His fall from grace leaving his company open for Pegasus to take over, and the higher-ups to overthrow him, and on top of that they stole his brother, the only person besides himself he's shown any care for, a tragic situation for him all around. The old king has quickly become the underdog, someone we might have considered a douche and were eager to see defeated earlier is now sympathetic and we want to see him win. It's no longer a purely selfish endeavor that he's undertaking, he's fighting for someone. And to overthrow someone who's worse than Kaiba ever was, someone who's taking crippling shots at everyone, the most virtuous people in the show. Kaiba may have bullied Yugi's grandfather, but Pegasus took his soul, and so we root for him. It's easy to appreciate this efficient change in his character, and by extension how we view Kaiba. In order to achieve his new goals, Kaiba has to embrace Yami's teachings, because what Kaiba has been prospering off of prior to his downfall isn't enough in this new magical world, where success is to a degree restricted to those with the power of the Millennium items. His only chance is to tap into that spiritual power that he had been neglecting, and even then the odds are against him, and this essential gradual convergence of Kaiba and Yami's mentalities does take place throughout the season. One excellent moment of this being Yami's duel with Dark Kaiba, the ghost of Kaiba, the embodied darkness that Yami had freed Kaiba of. Now Yami faces it directly in a duel. We can physically see the monster that resided within Kaiba, and it makes that sense of missing identity from him all the more real, while simultaneously accentuating the pure good of Yami, where in this duel he faces a whole other level of evil evil, someone that is simply evil and eradicates it from existence on a spiritual level, helping to cement Yami as this force of divine intervention, as the savior, fueling the Chosen One narrative that we would discover by the end of the season. These two goated characters who met as foes, Yami and Kaiba, are now working to one another's mutual benefit. Not to say that their relationship has done a 180, Kaiba's helping Yami for other reasons, but it's still quite satisfying. And despite their separation, Kaiba finds himself in his own state of desperation, where he unintentionally taps into the heart of the cards. And when you think about it, this is one of the most impactful displays of this power in the game itself, as he seems to connect to the heart of the Blue Eyes and convinces it to call off its attack, causing it to disobey the person wielding the card. And this act of loyalty from Kaiba's monster, the monster with by far the strongest connection to Kaiba, a connection we eventually learn traces back thousands of years, provides a subtle humanization of the monsters that gives them an added layer of intrigue, making the Blue Eyes a little bit more than just a character-defining, awesome-looking iconic monster and card. And quickly we can notice the potential of Kaiba manifesting. He can tap into this wellspring of power. The problem is simply his fear. He only has trust in his old ways, the strategy he's familiar with. He has respect for the heart of the cards. He can see the truth behind Yami's words, but he isn't willing to step over the edge into the unknown and use it against Pegasus. And who can blame him? It requires staking yours and your brother's life on this unfamiliar power of faith against the skills that you've polished your whole life. No reasonable person makes this leap, but the show is telling us that this is the way. Yami had a couple other interesting things in this duel as well. He faced 3 Blue Eyes, one of which was handled by Kaiba, but 2 of them he defeated, and fought with one himself through the power of Monster Reborn, an example of the moves made in the game, accentuating a broader theme, in this case loyalty, since Kaiba's spirit monster takes Yami's side, as Kaiba has. And additionally we get this collaborative payoff where in the hands of Yami, the power of Kaiba grows to new heights, symbolizing the strength of their cooperation. All the while this duel is testing the legitimacy of Yami, the question being if Yami is simply carried by Exodia. Can he attain such excellence without it? And throughout the season, the answer becomes a resounding yes. However, in this match we get a mixed answer. On one hand, he was going to lose without Kaiba's help, but on the other, he defeated 2 Blue Eyes on his own. This gives both a degree of credence to the Pharaoh's singularity, while placing some limitations and creating a clear path of progression for Yami to traverse going forward, and helps give perspective on Kaiba's power in a more realistic scenario. But while we're all stirred up from this glorious victory and the eradication of evil, they decide to throw in an additional Sigma moment for Yami. Suddenly he's transformed into this shining astral energy, as if he were more a force of nature than man, flickering like a flame, projecting his burning passion, with the prominent third eye gazing at Pegasus, enforcing this immense wisdom of the Pharaoh, all accentuating his godly essence, while delivering this intense declaration of his certain success and the downfall of Pegasus, the overlord of the Ark, by his hands, encouraging anticipation of the big showdown that will inevitably take place at the end of this long journey. It's a chilling scene that splices in so many emotions and ideas on top of the ones from the duel itself, while giving this visual overload from the sudden change and beautiful complex design of the Pharaoh. The complicated rivalry between Yami and Kaiba has just begun, however, and this gets turned to the max when they face off for the right to enter Pegasus's castle, arguably the best duel in the season, and the creators did a terrific job at setting the stage for Kaiba to fall into a deep state of misery in the duel, which was important for bringing out more layers of his character. As his brother Mokuba lay captive in Pegasus's prison, feelings of familial abandonment start to take hold. His confidence in his brother is shaken. We're given context for this in Kaiba and Mokuba's backstory. He's been protecting his brother his whole life. As orphans, they stuck together no matter what, even as people try to separate them through adoption. We also learn that even back then, Kaiba was always the winner, retroactively strengthening the impact of Kaiba's failures in this arc, and the ones to come, as he fails to rescue Mokuba. Pegasus steals his soul, placing Kaiba in a paralleled situation to Yami, and it's this shared plight that will complicate the duel Pegasus forces on them, as he exploits Kaiba's virtue, corrupting his decisions. Using their hearts against them is the name of the game. So Kaiba confronts Yugi with the promise of righting the wrongs of the past, that he now understands and perhaps embraces the heart of the cards, a central misunderstood truth that Yami's character is determined to spread and give clarity to. So another partial convergence of their two characters, although you might prefer to interpret this as misdirection from Kaiba out of desperation to face Yugi again, and further supported by his wild actions in the duel itself, which would also be interesting, though perhaps he did come with noble intentions but simply could not stay consistent in the face of defeat, a breaking of his own ideals for the sake of love. Important to consider as well that in the duel itself we discover that Kaiba doesn't actually grasp the heart of the cards yet. His conventional power-oriented mind has predisposed him to believing that upon destroying the physical cards in Yami's deck with the Crush Card virus, he would have in fact destroyed the heart of the cards. However, in further exploring the idea behind Yami's game-winning philosophy, and to Kaiba's detriment, the body of these monsters are not their heart. This misstep leaves Yami with an opportunity to counteract Kaiba's Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, the most potent representation representation of his idea of power, all of the strongest dragons combined into one unstoppable beast, thwarted by Yami's ultimate defense, the strength of the collective, Kuriboh multiplied, the weakest united against the strongest, expressing another difference between Yami and Kaiba, the support of friends, and this theme of the one versus the many resurfaces later as well. An impending humiliating defeat, with so much on the line, prompts a deep introspective moment from Kaiba as he loses his sense of surrounding, and his inner child who knew only success and was always there for Mokuba scorns this new Kaiba. How humiliating to be looked down on by a child version of yourself, spitting on his life's progress, as his little brother is lost into the corrupted Blue Eyes ultimate dragon, the monster he put all his confidence in melting away along with the mental fortitude of Kaiba, pushing him to the edge, a place where he would do whatever it takes to win. And for the safety of family, honor is broken, which will in turn bring the most out of Yami and symmetrically sparking an internal conflict between two sides of our main character. It's fair to look at Yugi as the child version of the Pharaoh, generating further overlap in the strifes of Kaiba and Yami. The extent of Kaiba's determination is revealed, bringing the Pharaoh to unprecedented levels of tested resolve, where he must choose whether or not to risk killing his opponent. This by all appearances morally superior being, Banisher of Darkness, must now determine whether he values winning and being the savior as much or more than Kaiba. Kaiba is convinced he understands the depths of his opponent, but once again he is misjudged. Yami has the same burning resolve to protect his family as Kaiba. He will never back down, and a moral shift on both sides of the field takes place. However, Yami Yugi, a complex being by his nature, as the merger of two souls, while up to this point a successful synthesis had been achieved between the two sides of our main character, this situation spurs his innocent inner child to burst forward in protest, and the collision of peaking resolves and moral limits is expanded and further internalized. Now Yami must fight himself from within in order to decide the outcome of this duel. While the Pharaoh struggles against Yugi, he ultimately is forced to halt his attack on Kaiba, losing the duel. While Yugi finds himself at his lowest, Kaiba scorns him for his lack of resolve, driving Taya to defend him, really well I might add. She challenges Kaiba for his lack of heart, of humanity, caring so much about the outcome of a game, while not having anything like the friendship they share, reinforcing this isolation theme surrounding Kaiba's character, leveraging everything Yugi has but he lacks, the things that make him strong, which clearly hurts Kaiba. However, a further layer to this is that the persecution of Kaiba here makes it very apparent that he's become a misunderstood character. After all, he did this for his brother, and a touching show of Kaiba's strength is that he doesn't even bother to set the record straight. He chooses to wear their judgment in silence. Not only must the main character deal with this unfair loss, but now he can't even trust himself to adhere to his own ideals. This rogue spirit threatens to strip him of self-agency, and while this duel made it clear that Yami's dueling skill is the real deal, that he isn't dependent on Exodia to reach the top, this fear of Yugi's inner nature breaks his will to duel, and drawing closer to the final showdown of the season, Yugi must pull himself back together. This is where a source of strength that won him the duel against Kaiba comes back into play. It's through his friends, the ones that he came with and the ones that he made along the way, that he would find his way back. The bulk of the credit for helping Yugi back goes to Taya and Mai. Taya provides psychological support by leading through example, taking on Yugi's challenger who's much more skilled than herself. She conquers her fear to encourage Yugi to conquer his, demonstrates the power of their friendship through her cards and game moves, while also touching the heart of her socially distant, egotistical opponent, who often plays a card called Elegant Egotist, which pretty much sums her up, to the effect of her throwing the duel. Taya managing to alter Mai's idea of the dynamic between friendship and competition, coming to realize that these two things can work harmoniously rather than be a hindrance, making this one of the better presentations of the power of friendship theme, which is very commonly used of course, but as a psychological healing method and something to bring people together rather than some spammable Super Saiyan power boost. I find it pretty compelling. It's this heartfelt act from Taya that inspires Mai to help Yugi complete his recovery in their duel soon after. In a touching passing of the torch, Mai, the one who strayed from those ideals that Yami thrived on in the past, but at last came around to, putting your heart in the game, dueling with honor, now returns to inspire that courage in him, after putting aside her deceptive ways. She also confesses her battle with the fear of failure that she had to come to terms with, and goes even further to say that friends aren't enough to solve the issue. You have to look within and face your demons in order to gain control over your life, something that moves Yami to reconcile the two sides of himself. When he needed it most, he's soon to face Pegasus. He's on the verge of losing this duel, having lost the defining virtue that makes him the legend of fear. It's his will, his faith in himself and his cards, with everything at stake, with everyone depending on him. This issue is bigger than himself. He has to believe. It's not a selfish calling. But the fear of failure sinks in even deeper as these stakes weigh on Yami, aligning Yami with the struggles of Taya and Mai even further as he attempts to bring forth his fate-guiding hand in order to draw one game-ending card. Packed into this deciding moment, the mental burden is shouldered by the support of Yugi as well as his friends, and they together face the unknown and open the actual door to the future with confidence. And at last, the mystical power of the Chosen One reignites, and even Pegasus, this god of dueling, is overwhelmed by the magic radiating from this draw of destiny, and the card drawn is the Blackluster Ritual. The forces of light and darkness coalesce to summon another powerful and iconic monster, complementing the union of Yugi and the Pharaoh that we had just witnessed, where one is light and the other dark, but together they were forced to be reckoned, a trait that will be furthered and play out in the final duel of this season. Now for Yami vs Pegasus, it's important to keep in mind how much has fallen on the main character's back. His path to becoming an Avenger has been made persistently steeper, and the payoff at the end all the more nourishing. Every successful attack on him and his companions throughout the arc, fueling our need to see Pegasus defeated, taking his grandpa, sending bullies to kick him off the island, sending an evil spirit with the appearance of Kaiba to psychologically torment him, forcing Kaiba to duel him so dishonorably, causing this deep internal conflict that Yami has just now overcome, stealing Mokuba and Kaiba's souls, and rejoicing at the psychological turmoil caused by making Yami duel his best friend, who also has so much riding on his success, and threatening to continue this rampage onto Yami's other friends. Pegasus has operated from the shadows and twisted the rules of the game for too long. The third most powerful duelist, Kaiba, despite tapping into the heart of the cards, has been utterly demolished. Who was once a menacing antagonist has become a damsel in distress for Yami to rescue, with his failure becoming a further springboard to launch Pegasus into being this singular threat that only the main character can face. All of this forming a dam of sorrow for Yami to shatter, allowing that flood of relief to wash over. But this of course won't be easy, as while Yami is known for having every counter to his opponents by drawing what he needs to win, Pegasus can see these plans forming in the mind of Yami, as well as having accrued complete information on the contents of Yami's deck throughout the tournament, allowing him to have every counter to his strategy. This invasiveness and control over the duel shakes Yami into thinking victory is impossible. Something has to change. The path to success that was foreshadowed prior by his grandfather is going to be the best way to deal with this, and what this looks like is an additional layer to the duel itself, the Mind Shuffle, a new way for the two spirits that make up the main character to synergize, the unique nature of their coexistence being utilized to disrupt the villain, the mystical power of the puzzle expanding to allow balance between the pro and antagonist to temporarily be achieved, and we start to get the first signs of cracks forming in the impervious control and confidence that the show has enforced in Pegasus the entire season. We can start to see underlying weakness in him. Dueling with his omniscience for so long has made him insecure to anything that he hasn't foreseen. He's shaken by the presence of a mere face-down card, something every duelist faces, and it's in this unstable state that the facade starts to peel away, both pushing Pegasus to rebalance the game back in his favor by summoning them into the Shadow Realm and summoning monsters that feel much different. When things were under control and everyone was caught in his web, playing his game, Pegasus duels with these silly toon monsters that for the most part match his personality, as most duelist monsters do, but now that he's been pushed into a corner, we see the underlying malice within Pegasus, represented by these dark, demonic corruptions of monsters, and in this strange setting, we discover more about the heightened weight of a shadow duel. Not only are the monsters here real, but the ones brought forth are summoned and sustained through mental energy, heightening the burden of a duelist. For a normal kid like Yugi to even stand against Pegasus in this duel is an unbearable drain on his mind. He can only manage to make one move with all of his strength, creating a sharp contrast that highlights the mental prowess of the Pharaoh, and allowing his role of protector to shine as he encourages Yugi to take shelter, prepared to bear the brunt of this duel without the aid of Yugi to perform the Mind Shuffle, and this as even Yami's friends are shut off from him. We've removed the essential sources of power that have carried the MC to greatness, a weakness coming at a time when all his strength is needed more than ever, and a returning sensation of doom takes over. The Pharaoh has become mentally stranded. The united power that defeated Kaiba has gone, or so he thinks. Except even the Pharaoh, who's lived 5,000 years, has more to learn about life. You can destroy Yugi's body, but you can't destroy his heart. Not as long as his friends exist to carry on his will and care for him, and this connection is one that transcends the space that has separated them. And as the mental support of his friends shielded him from falling to a broken resolve in past duels, here their support is heightened, as the focused collective support of his friends shields his mind from the prying Pegasus, opening greater fissures within the armor of the long-standing control villain. The next piece of the puzzle is Yugi's strength, something that exists even though he lacks the strength to stay in the duel. His courage courage, his single desperate contribution, remaining after he's gone, focused onto a single card, placed as he was consumed by the very atmosphere, requiring immense faith from the pharaoh in his kindred spirit to utilize, through a move that would ordinarily mean his self-destruction, and it's this belief that guides him to performing the greatest ritual in the series, giving Yugi some much-needed glow, as his courage is lionized in the pharaoh's declaration against Pegasus, delivered with great magnitude, as these dark powers converge and give way to the most badass dark sorcerer ever witnessed, and the most exciting moment of the season for me. But before the Magician of Black Chaos can slay Pegasus, Yami will have to tap into another power, one he used against Kaiba to take down his ultimate monster. Now the feeble Karibo multiply once again, to blind the Millennium Eyes Restrict, and just as the friends of Yugi, who stand no chance against Pegasus alone, pile their strength together to block out Pegasus's seemingly unstoppable Millennium Eye, the weakest monsters in the whole game unite to block out the eyes of this seemingly unstoppable monster, paving the way for Pegasus to be destroyed once and for all. And at last, terror consumes the bane of their existence, someone whose success which dwarfed even Kaiba's without him ever even using his full strength, permeating the entire season and seemingly knowing no end, is unmade, a wonderful moment of relief. But surprisingly, there's another layer that complicates the joy of his defeat slightly, and even draws out a bit of sympathy, as a more pure darkness steps in to slay him in Yami Bakura, by exploring a softer side of Pegasus, a deep love between him and his wife cultivated since childhood, filling up the canvas of his character in regards to how he used to be, how he became what he is today, and why he acts so monstrously. And the thing that set Pegasus down this dark road so many years ago provides an emotional unification between the motivations of the main characters. They're all trying to rescue a loved one, and more deep ties between Pegasus and Yami arise. Pegasus blames fate as the thing that took his woman away. He curses it, and the character who bears a mystical connection to fate just so happens to be the protagonist he spent most of his time on this show opposing. That said, you could also view it as yet further alignment between the two of them, as Yami, the controller of fate, achieves in the show just the thing that Pegasus seeks, the control over fate to restore his loved one. And this is an ambition that is exactly what Yami fulfills in saving his grandpa, blurring the lines between these two seemingly diverging and antithetic people, similar to what was achieved through the slow convergence of Kaiba and Yami, leaving a takeaway here from Duelist Kingdom, that our enemies are more similar to us than we realize, and it's a matter of circumstance rather than an inherent divide between people that determines the foe that stands against you. Lastly, the season ends on a great transitional period, to stoke the excitement of what's to come, and what better to expand the world both outward physically to Egypt and backward in time, providing well-timed lore on this terrific character, the pharaoh who's achieved so much yet remains in many ways a mystery, and they do a great job of representing this by literally exploring the mind of the pharaoh, and this is presented as a minefield of inaccessible complexity, further sparking our curiosity and adding to the pool of questions we have about this character and the era that he originated from, which is quite useful for drawing interest to the next season, one I hope to talk about as well. If you'd like that content to be made, like and subscribe. And with all that said, this was your boy Woski, and I'll catch you later. Peace.